Welcome to the Showcase the City Academy podcast, which shines a light on West End trailblazers. And this week's trailblazer needs little introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. Not only was he part of one of the biggest pop groups of the noughties, but he's also been treading the West End boards now across 3 decades. And believe it or not, he's only 35 years old. He has wowed audiences in a whole plethora of shows, from Beautiful the Carole King Story through to Hairspray, Kiss Me Kate, Sylvia, Motown, Back to the Future, playing all sorts of iconic roles, including Berry Gordy, Winston Churchill, Bill Calhoun. But he is now back where he belongs, in Hamilton, in his second stint playing the role of Aaron Burr. It is indeed Jay Perry.
Thank you so much. What an introduction. Thank you.
Well, I have done my homework. Thank you so much for coming in, particularly on a show day. Obviously, as that brief bio makes very clear, you've performed in the West End and in music as well for a very, very long time. Do you remember a life where you weren't performing?
No, not really. As you said, 3 decades. That's crazy. I don't know who's let me do that for 3 decades. They must be mad. But yeah, I don't really remember a time where I wasn't performing. I mean, it's all I've ever known, but still doing it, still giving it a shot.
And I suppose your career, correct me if I'm wrong, but you started in the West End, didn't you, when you were very young?
Yes.
Then obviously went into the music, and now we're obviously back doing the theatre side of it.
Yeah, so my first job is I think I was like 9 or 10, was Whistle Down the Wind at the Aldwych Theatre, which was like an Andrew Lloyd Webber production. Yeah, when I was like 9 or 10. So I've been, theatre's like where I started. So it always felt like when I went back to theatre, it felt like, like I was old hat. It felt like natural to do that,
Did theatre always feel like your kind of first love? Did you always feel like you would go back to it at some point?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it took me a while to realise what it was that I really enjoyed. And performance and live performance is what I enjoy. It's what kind of gives me that buzz. It's my passion. And so I think, like, obviously going more into the music scene and coming out of that, I was like, what is it about this that I enjoy?
Yeah.
And it's performance. And so theatre gives me that opportunity to perform, whilst not having to deal with some of the other political aspects of the music industry.
Yes.
So, theatre felt like a natural fit.
And I mean, you must get asked all the time about S Club and the music industry and all that sort of thing. But I suppose the part that I'm sort of interested in is your opinion on kind of child stardom, because I suppose you've experienced that. How did that feel?
I think at the time, it always felt like it was just what I was doing, because as a child, you don't really comprehend things in the way that you do, or you would now as an adult. And so as a kid, you're just kind of in the moment. So it was just really cool that we were going to Top of the Pops, and it was just really cool that we were going to, perform at Buckingham Palace. These are things that were so ridiculous, and as an adult you would be mind blown about, but as a kid you're just like, it's kind of cool. So child stardom just does, I don't think you really even comprehend it in the same way that you would as an adult. So I was just going through the motions. Now when I look back at it, I'm like, that was insane, mental.
When I spoke to Kerry Ellis about this, actually, we were talking about the same thing, because I feel like the younger you are, obviously, it's harder to stop in the moment and kind of just take note of what you're doing. And like you say, you've done so many kind of, overused the word iconic, but they are iconic things like Top of the Pops, Blue Peter even, shows like that.
Mad, yeah.
Do you find it easier, the older you get, but to sort of stop in the moment and be like, right, I'm back in Hamilton, I'm really going to kind of enjoy this for what it is?
I think I have got better at that. I think that in my 20s, I probably wasn't so good at that, just because, it's your 20s, you're just having fun and being silly. But I think as I've got older and into my 30s, I've really tried to take stock of where I am, and especially my progression within the musical theatre industry. I just want to enjoy it, and nothing's ever promised, especially in this industry. So when things are going well, it's better to try and be more present. And so I've got better at that.
Sure. I mean, nostalgia now feels like it's so big. And, particularly, I suppose, with social media, not a day goes by where pop videos aren't sort of homaged on Hunsnet and all that sort of thing. And people love reminiscing and things like that. Do you feel really proud that you were kind of part of something that has kind of stood the time and is a big part of noughties music culture? Yeah,
I am proud now. I think that, again, there was a period of time that I don't think it's not that I wasn't proud, but I think that I wanted to try and create something outside of that.
Yeah.
And so I think that because of that, I shied away from it a little bit. Now, like and I guess maybe because I feel a little bit more comfortable with where I am in my career nowadays, that I guess I can really look back on it with pride and really look back on that time and just feel proud that I was a part of something special. And even if it wasn't, special for anyone else, it was special for me and special for the guys that I did it with,
Yeah. And I always think, one door closes, another opens. And what I think must be really interesting is, because you have been performing since such a young age, has that helped you with the discipline that comes with doing the, West End of 8 shows a week and things like that, because you've been doing it so long?
I think so, yeah. I think so. I think that there's a little bit of a stigma in musical theatre about people that haven't traditionally trained in the same way that other people have. And I think that I would like to think that I'm quite a good example of going down a different route. I haven't taken the traditional route, and I think I'm still just as professional and disciplined as everyone else. It's super hard doing 8 shows a week, and so it's not for the faint-hearted at all. But I take so much pride in what I do. I take so much pride in getting the opportunity to do the shows that I've done, be a part of the productions that I have been. So that level of professionalism and stuff is just pretty much ingrained in me. And so I think it's a bit of both. Like, coming from that world at such a young age, we worked hard as kids. And so I was used to it, but at the same time, I'm really proud of what I get to do. So I want to do my best,
I remember hearing you on another podcast, you were talking about how, you had to work really hard to establish yourself in theatre. And I think you even said because people wouldn't take me seriously because I'd come from, music. But to some degree, I feel like that would surprise a lot of people because ultimately, you'd accrued how many years of experience of live performing, performing to really difficult, tight schedules and all that, and then demand. So do you think it's quite unfair in some ways that people are possibly scrutinised?
I think it is and it isn't. I would put myself in other people's shoes, and look, I love being a part of SCAP Juniors. It was a lot of fun, but it wasn't necessarily, it wasn't necessarily seen as the most serious band and the most serious, group. So I can understand people looking at it and kind of thinking, well, he was just kind of a kid, just singing and dancing and prancing around, which ultimately is not much different to what I still do now. I'm still just prancing around. But I think that level of people taking me serious was just kind of, how we think of pop groups and how you think of people that haven't necessarily trained in the same way that a lot of the people in the industry have. And I can be someone that does that a little bit now as well. Sometimes I'll go, oh, of course they're going to get that job because they've got 500,000 followers, but they're also, there's also a lot of talent behind a lot of the people that, have all of these followers and have these followings. So, I need to learn from my own my own journey, I guess.
I was going to say, actually, do you think that does come into it now? Because I suppose a lot of people, a lot of big shows come with big sort of fandoms as well. And I suppose social media does come into it where everyone is sort of, to some degree, a bit of an influencer because that's the best way of kind of maintaining a profile and kind of interacting with people. So do you think that is a factor in it now when people are sort of deciding on casting and things like that, of looking at people's social media profiles?
I think so. I think that it's such a competitive industry, and there's a lot of the time there's nothing between two people. You're down to the last 2 people for a gig, and if there's nothing between them, I think that sometimes they will look at the person that has 50 to 100,000 followers versus the person that's got followed by just their mum. They probably will take that into consideration. So I think it does play a part nowadays. I know that I certainly put more effort into my socials than I would like to, but I do because it's part of being, branding yourself,
But at the same time, pretty much like another full-time job on top of what you're already doing.
Truly, it's truly hard work.
So we're just going to break it up slightly and just throw some quick-fire questions at you. So whatever the first thing that comes to your head is. So a couple of options here: pop music or musical theatre?
Pop music.
The 90s or the noughties?
The noughties.
One Step Closer or Automatic High?
One Step Closer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't even need you to finish that. One Step Closer is a bop, a true bop.
I just loved Automatic High.
Everyone loves Automatic High, and I'm not the biggest fan of Automatic High.
Oh, really?
No.
God.
Maybe it was the flip-flops. I don't know. It's giving
Still
me
on my
PTSD.
playlist. Drinks after the show or home as quick as you can?
Home as quick as I can nowadays, yeah.
High fashion or high street fashion?
High fashion.
This morning or loose women?
This morning.
Chest day or leg day?
Chest day.
Singing or dancing?
Singing.
Performing in your 20s or performing in your 30s?
Performing in my 30s. With the energy of performing in my 20s.
Do you think as well that that's just because you're sort of more secure in terms of having accrued more experience?
Yeah, I feel like in my 30s, like I've really been able to like let go of a lot of the insecurities that I had in my 20s, performance-wise and not performance-wise.
Yeah.
But yeah, gosh, I miss the energy of my 20s. That would be nice.
Yeah. Yes, I think we'd all like to go back there.
Yeah.
So this podcast, obviously, as I mentioned, is with City Academy, and a lot of what they do is, you know, training in performance, musical theatre. And I think one thing that everyone experiences and kind of navigates very differently is disappointment and how they sort of handle that. And I think, again, you probably look at people that are sort of in long-running West End shows and think, oh, you're living the dream and all that. But I'm sure, again, you've had to sort of deal with disappointment throughout your career. What would be your main sort of tips and advice for people in terms of how you do navigate that when you know, do go for a role that your heart might be set on and then you don't get it and you get knocked back? How do you sort of deal with that sort of thing?
I mean, I'm quite big into my self-care and self-love. Like, so if I get a knockback, I'm the first person to kind of like go home, put candles on, run my bath, like put my favorite playlists on, like, and like tune out the world for a second.
Yeah.
So like self-care and stuff is a big one for me. But in a more practical sense, I think it's just about kind of getting back on that horse, you know? It's such a competitive industry. It's just impossible to get yeses every time.
Yeah.
It only takes one yes to change your whole career.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, like, I really never thought I'd be able to break into this industry in the way that I have.
Yeah.
And it really took one kind of job to like switch everything for me and also switch my mindset on it. So just keep going, you know? It really only takes one person to be like, yeah, I see something in you and can change the whole gig.
I've heard a lot of people talk about a sort of, you know, one door closing moment and another opening, you know, where someone said, oh, I went for this role, I didn't get it. But then the next day I got a phone call and I got offered that show and said, have you had any moment like that?
Yeah, there's been things that I've really wanted to do at the time. There was a show that I really wanted to, I won't mention what it is, but it wasn't necessarily that I didn't get the show. It was timings just would not work out with this show. It just would not work out. And I was so gutted because it was a matter of maybe days or weeks or something for this show. And I just really wanted to do it. It ended up that the show opened and it closed like within the first few months of it being open. So, and then I ended up getting a big show on the back end of that. And so sometimes it's just not meant to be, you know, like, I mean, I really do go with the kind of vibe of what's for you won't pass you by, you know? And so, there's been a few close misses and ones that haven't kind of worked out or that I've got big no's and then I've gone on to do other things that have just been just as fulfilling and just as amazing, you know?
There must be a lot of instances as well where kind of life experience comes into it, where maybe you do get knocked back for something and maybe in hindsight then look back on it and think, actually, maybe I wasn't at the right point to play it at that point in my life.
100%. Aaron Burr is the perfect example of that.
Yeah.
When I was in Hamilton before, I was a standby.
Yeah.
So I covered Hamilton, Burr and Lafayette Jefferson.
Yeah.
And you couldn't tell me that I wasn't ready to play Aaron Burr at that period of time. I'd done so many shows. Unfortunately, the person that was playing the role at the time, Simon, had got injured.
Yeah.
And so I had took over for maybe a 6-month period. And so for me, I was like so in that mindset that it was the right time for me to have that role. And actually, like, coming back to it 2.5 years later, now I realized that actually it wasn't the right time for me. I needed to go away and do other shows and hone my talents in other ways and, you know, grow up as a person. And I've come back and my version of Aaron Burr now is completely different to the version that I did in 2020 or whenever it was, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think hindsight plays a huge part in it.
Yeah. You mentioned obviously being a standby as well. And it does feel like, particularly since the pandemic, there was a real kind of light shone on standbys, alternates, understudies in the sense of celebrating those people for what they bring. How challenging is it when you're doing multiple roles as a standby? Because it must just be, well, I suppose the ultimate form of multitasking in many ways.
Yeah.
But how big a challenge is that compared to when you are just playing, one solo role?
Yeah, I mean, I look back on it now and I'm like, how did I do that? Like,
Yeah.
how did I do that? But, there's a real buzz about it as well. There's a real kind of excitement about it. And some people are so wired in that way where they love jumping from role to role to role. I'm not sure I was that guy. I'm not sure I've ever been that guy.
Yeah.
The lack of like time that you would get sometimes to kind of prepare would just be a little bit too much for me.
Yeah.
But I think you get used to it, and those 3 roles were so iconic and like each one is so different that I really, really did enjoy getting the opportunity to kind of put my spin on each of them.
Yeah.
But would I go back? No.
Yeah.
I am more than happy just to be doing Aaron Burr every night nowadays.
Yeah, fair enough. We talked about obviously 3 decades of performing, and reading the bio, it kind of feels almost like you did the music, you then went into theatre and all that. But was there ever a point where it was perhaps more difficult than say it is now, and you thought about, do you know what, should I give up performing and do something else?
Well, yeah, I mean, like when I finished, when I left S Club Juniors, I went back to school, and like secondary school. So was doing my GCSEs and, just being a kid. And I was like, this is the life for me. I was like, this is so iconic. Just going to the park with my mates, getting drunk, like being silly. Like I was like, this is perfect. This is all I want to do. And so for a while then I was like, I don't want to perform or act or sing or anything. And the plan was to go into the fashion world. That was what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I loved clothes. I've always loved clothes. I've loved that industry. I've always been, had my eye on that kind of industry. And so for me, that was the natural place to go.
Yeah.
I then got a little bit older and a little bit wiser. And I was like, well, the fashion industry, just as competitive as the music industry or the theatre industry, probably.
Yeah.
What's really going to bring me the most joy? What's really going to bring me, what is that I really want to do, no matter how hard it's going to be to try and to make that happen? What do I really want to do? And it was theatre. Theatre was the decision. It was the one that that made the most sense for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, at those beginning 2-3 years, getting back into theatre.
Yeah.
That was so tough. Like it really was. Like it was rejection after rejection after rejection. It was constant no's. And then the yeses were gigs that were just tough. Performing in front of like 2 or 3 people. I remember I did a show at the, I don't know, was it the King's Head in Islington, which is an amazing venue. And they do incredible work there. But the particular show that I was doing, like 2-3 people were turning up, like no one was there to come and see it, That's tough. That's really, really tough because you're not really getting paid much either. So like doing things like that is really tough. And so you've got to really be in it for the love of it at that point. And I was, but at the same time, there was parts of me that was like, I don't know if this is ever going to take off in a way that is going to be viable. You know?
If it did sort of all end tomorrow and you walked away, do you think you would go into fashion? Would that be your sort of fallback?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I would completely career shift. I actually don't know what I would do, and I think that's terrifying, but
and exciting at the same time, I suppose.
Maybe, I don't know. But I wouldn't do fashion. No.
Yeah.
I think that was when I was younger. I think that in my head was really a super exciting world that I'd want to be a part of. Yeah. Now I think like I just don't know if I would be cut out or set out for that kind of a world now. Like 30, like me in my 30s, I don't know if I'd be bothered. And can't be asked.
I think sometimes as well when it comes to, well, I'm sure you're obviously passionate about what you do, but when it comes to other passions, sometimes it's quite nice to keep them separate and be like, that's just something I can enjoy. And...
Oh yeah, I just want to like, go on the Vogue website and look at the latest Sky Pirelli show. That's what I want to do nowadays. That's enough for me.
Yeah, no, exactly. You kind of alluded to this earlier, but, you are essentially kind of a West End veteran to have performed for, as long as you have and obviously still be performing continuously. Was there a moment that you saw as like the breakthrough where you're like, right, I've arrived, this is the role and it's kind of, this has kind of cemented it?
So probably the change was like, Berry Gordy Motown. That was a real kind of shift for me. I was like maybe 28 at the time, I think. And I had been in the show for a year previously in Motown as part of the ensemble.
Yeah.
And Cedric Neal, who was playing Berry Gordy, was leaving that year. And I currently at that time I think I was the third cover maybe for the part. Third cover I think I was. And I'd never been on for the role. And my associate director said, I think you should audition for the part. And I was like, I mean, I'm the third cut. I'm not going to get the gig. I'm the third cover. I've never been on. No one's ever seen me do it. But she encouraged me to go for it. And so I went for it and I ended up getting the role. And it changed my life because it was my first leading role in a big commercial musical theatre show. It was the toughest thing I've ever done.
Really?
It was so difficult. Like, again, that level of discipline just jumped from like here to there. Like, it was mad. But it made me realize that was what I wanted. I never saw myself in a leading capacity. I never saw that for myself. And it opened my eyes to that something that I didn't think I could do. And I was like, and I finished that year. I did like a year and a bit in that role before the show closed. And I kind of came out from it and I was like, I can do that. Like, there's no limitations to what you can achieve actually. And it really changed my mindset and how I see myself, but also how I see life now,
Yeah. Are you someone that believes in manifesting? Because I've heard a lot of people talk about this where they're like, I set my mind, I said I will definitely be in, Elphaba and Wicked, and then it happened for me 2 years later. Do you sort of set yourself goals like that?
I do loosely.
Yeah.
I do loosely. I do in a non-pressurized way because I think it can go two ways, can't it? Like, I understand the idea of manifestation and I see how that works for a lot of people.
Yeah.
The way that I'm wired, I feel like I would be like, you have to. Instead of being like really chill about it and being like, this is where I'm going to be and I just can't wait for that. It would be like, you have to do it. Like, and it's like, so I'm trying to like find this happy medium place where it's like, it's what I would love to do. And, I feel like if I set my mind to it and if I work towards it, then there's no reason why it can't happen. But I'm not going to put that pressure on myself. So so it's a balance.
Yeah.
But I do believe in it, but a no pressure version.
Exactly. And, talking about the life of a performer, because, it's obviously 8 shows a week, but it's kind of everything on top of that as well. And, the vocal training and like maintaining your physical fitness and things like that. And how hard is it to kind of like fit all of that side of it in, the side of it where you're not on stage, but it is so integral towards getting you on the stage?
Yeah. Again, I've got better at that, I think. And I've had to get better because I've got older. So it's more important to like look after my voice now. It's more important to be in the gym. It's more important to, eat certain things. And it's just a part of it, and like, I think you kind of learn the hard way sometimes. When you're in your 20s, you bounce back so quickly. Yeah. You can go out and have a drink and you'll be in the show the next day and you're absolutely fine. Yeah. There is no way that I could go out for drinks tonight and do 2 shows tomorrow. There is not a chance. Yeah. So your body just, your body tells you what you need and you have to kind of adapt to it, Yeah. But yeah, time management. Like, I'm used to kind of going, okay, I'm leaving the house to go to the gym. Yeah. And then I'll be able to go and have a steam afterwards in the gym, which is perfect for my voice. So that's a 2-in-1 job, like, but yeah, just, you get used to it.
Is there any difference in that sense between, being a leading man and carrying a show to some degree and then being in the ensemble where, is it slightly easier in that sense to be like, oh, do you know what? I will head out after the show.
I think everyone's different. I mean, for me personally, being in a leading position has always been tougher because it's more vocally demanding. So, and if I have a drink, that is the first thing to go for me. If I have a drink, the next morning I wake up and I'm like, Sahara Desert. So like...
It's that horrible trying to siren and then being like, nothing's coming out.
Like truly, it's dust, honestly. So yeah, for me, yes. However, some people are wired in the way that they can literally go out and guzzle. Yeah. And then they're absolutely fine the next day. I'm so jealous of them people. But yeah, it's probably for the best that I'm not that guy. But yeah, some people are wired that way. And then in terms of like the ensemble, like in a show like Hamilton, the ensemble work so hard
Yeah.
I don't think that's an option for them either, you know?
Yeah. You talked about vocals, and obviously in Hamilton, there's not just the singing, but there's the rapping that comes into it as well. When you first went into doing that, is that something that you have to sort of learn, teach yourself? Is that something you've done much of before?
I don't think like I don't think I had to put much thought into the like learning to rap per se. I was such a huge Hamilton fan anyway. That going into the audition, it was one of the first auditions that I think I ever went into where I was like, I know this material. This is material I know. Like a lot of other shows, I'll kind of have to like really scrub up on my material because I'll be like, I don't really know the show this well or whatever. Hamilton, I was such a fan of the show that it came so naturally to me, and the rap part of it was just a part of what the show is. So it didn't feel like rap to me. It just felt like this is how they present the show. This is a medium in which they present the show. And so now the rapping into the singing into the more traditional prose of the show just comes so naturally to me. But I never really had to put too much thought into it but when you do think about it, you're like, but I am actually rapping. That's crazy. Yeah. It's so crazy. But yeah, I'm also a bit of a fan of rap music in general. So maybe there was a part of me that was just waiting for my moment. Waiting for my rap moment. And this is as close as it'll ever get, by the way.
Well, you never know. Next foray into music.
Right, exactly.
Music. You heard it here
Me
first.
and Nicki Minaj,
and I think as well, this is the first time you've gone back to a show.
Yes.
Obviously in different roles. But when you signed off the first time you were in the show, did you think, oh, do you know, I'd love to come back here? Or did you sort of think, oh, I'm signing off?
No, I knew I would go back for Aaron Burr. I knew that would be the role that I would go back to the show for. Yeah. I wasn't overly fussed about either Hamilton or Lafayette. No disrespect to them roles. But I knew that Aaron Burr was the role that I would go back for. There's something about this role that just has spoken to me from the very, very first time that I saw the show in New York. In 2016, I think it was, I saw it. And Leslie Odom Jr. walked on that stage as Aaron Burr, and I was like, that's the role. How can that be me? Like, that has to be me at some point.
And then the manifesting began. And, you mention it, it's obviously a huge show, and it's a global phenomenon, really. And you're playing it on the West End stage. You mentioned it on Broadway. Is that something you'd like to do, whether it's play it on Broadway, play it somewhere else in the world? Do you have any aspirations in that sense of...
I mean... I haven't really thought too much about it, but I mean, if Broadway came knocking, I'd have to have a think about it. I think anyone would have to have a think about it. But no, it's not something I've really put much thought into. But like, as I say, I love the role. So you know, if there's opportunities elsewhere, then it would be something that would spark my interest.
And talking about sort of the demands of doing this job as well, it's a hugely demanding schedule, and it's very unsociable hours. Obviously, you don't have your weekends, you don't have evenings. I'm sure you have to make a lot of sacrifices by way of missing other people's life events and all that sort of thing. Like, how difficult is that in terms of, doing a show, but then at the same time maintaining, relationships, friendships, all of that sort of thing?
I think that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
I genuinely think that's the hardest part. And I think that as I've got older, it's only got harder.
Yeah.
I think that would be the first thing I would say in terms of negatives about the industry in general, is that, like you do miss out on a lot of things. And as I've got older, I've wanted to miss out on them things less.
Yeah.
I want to make less compromises in terms of missing out on those things. And so that's been a big part of, thinking about going forward in this industry is how I can have more autonomy with my time and autonomy with the people that I love and the people that I want to be around and be with. How can I spend more time with them? And so that's an ongoing kind of conversation with myself and how to make that best happen. In one sense, I get to do what I love to do, but in another sense, I really miss out on spending a lot of time with the people that I love. That's a difficult dichotomy.
I don't think anyone gets that balance. Well, I certainly don't.
Exactly, and that's a lot in a lot of different industries, So I recognise that as well. But if someone was to say what's the biggest difficulty, I would say that.
Yeah. And we talked about going back, and in terms of going back to Hamilton, but are there any other kind of shows or roles that, again, with a bit more life experience, you'd love the opportunity to do again?
I don't think I would ever do Motown or Berry Gordy again. That was like a once in a kind of lifetime thing for me. As I say, it kind of changed my mindset and the way I look at things. But that to me was the hardest role I've ever done.
Yeah.
And I look back at it, I think never, ever again. Like there were so many songs in that show. There was like 52 songs. And I think Berry Gordy sang like 25 to 30 of them. It was exhausting. And I was almost 10 years younger than I am now. So there's not a chance. There's not a chance. But is there any other show I would do? I don't think so. You know, Hamilton was always the one that I knew I would probably want to go back to. Everything else felt like it came at the perfect time and we can move forward, you know?
Yeah. Is there an extra layer of pressure as well when I refer to it being like a global phenomenon, and those big shows do come with such big kind of fan bases and people that really sort of cherish the show and follow it and post about it on social media and all of that. Does that bring a kind of another layer of challenge to doing it?
I think you're aware of that. I think you're definitely aware of the fandom behind it and the fact that the majority of the people in the audience know the words just as well as you do. So there's no, like, you know, when you make a mistake, you're like, they knew I made a mistake. Like other shows, you might feel like you got away with it because it might be like a brief, you know, two words that you might have mixed up the wrong way or something. If it's Hamilton, you know, there's a good majority of people in the audience that are like, like
you got it wrong.
Yeah, they caught you. I remember on my first, I think it was the first time I went on as Aaron Burr in 2000 and whatever it was, the first time. When I left stage door, there was, you know, some fans there and I was signing some stuff and one of the fans was like, oh my gosh, you did the best job. You were so great. Congratulations. I only heard like 3 things that you messed up, but apart from that, you were amazing. And I was like,
thanks for that.
Thank you. Thanks for the reminder.
Oh God, taking notes, literally.
Like honestly, yeah.
Something I think is really interesting as well is in terms of, you know, West End talent theatre performers. I remember when Hannah Waddingham won an Emmy, I think it must have been, for Ted Lasso, and she said, you know, let's get performers out there and give them sort of more mainstream visibility. And it does feel like, obviously, she's done amazingly. And even with things like, you know, Marisha Wallace being on Celebrity Big Brother last year and Laken Williams being on Strictly and all of that sort of thing, do you think it's important for performers to get kind of more mainstream recognition in that way? And also, is there anything else you would like to do in that realm?
Yes, I do think I do agree with that. I think that we're commercial artists. That's what we are, you know. And you know, the majority of us has trained or been in the industry for a very long time. Yeah, we're used to, you know, working extremely hard. The level of talent is unmatched, like it really truly is. So yeah, I think that there's no reason you shouldn't see, you know, West End performers doing commercial shows, but also doing big TV jobs and stuff. With Broadway actors, you see that a lot more. You see them jump into TV shows and then go back to a Broadway show, and you see that a lot more. So I'd love to see that championed over here more. Yeah. And yes, in answer to your question, the show I want to do so badly is Dancing on Ice.
Oh, really?
I love skating. I love it. I've loved it since I was a kid. Like I absolutely adore it.
And obviously, talking about sort of big TV shows, like Aaron, your colleague from S Club Juniors, does a lot of, I know, choreography for those sort of big shows. How gratifying as well is it to see like a lot of your former bandmates from that and the success that they've achieved as well, and the fact that so many of you are still, you know, sort of working in so central within kind of show business. Does that feel really good? The fact that, you know, you've all sustained careers over 20 odd years, basically.
Yeah, I love it. Like I genuinely love seeing their success. It's so lovely. You know, we started our journeys in this industry together. So to see Aaron, Rochelle, Frankie just like killing it and like just, you know, just being huge successes in both their personal and their careers as well. It's just so lovely. Like it's just because they all deserve it. You know, we all deserve it. And you know, as difficult as it was when we were kids to always be friends and always get on and, you know, whatever. As adults, they're all gems. They're all lovely people, and you just want them to do well. So yes, seeing them be successful is perfect.
Yes. We're coming to a close, but one thing I'm interested in is sort of looking to the future. And I suppose, you know, you're in Hamilton now, and I suppose it's probably quite hard to look beyond that, other than a role in Dancing on Ice, obviously. But if I were to, say, interview you again in 5 years' time, what would be the main things that you would have hoped to have achieved within that time?
That is a really tough question. I'm not really a 5-year goal person, like, everyone's got a 5-year plan. That's what I'm not really a 5-year plan person, but I think I just, I think I really prioritize my happiness now, my joy, like all of them things are so important to me. Doing things that I enjoy, being around people that I enjoy. So lots more of that. Career-wise, I'm not quite done yet in musical theatre. I think that, as I said, it gets harder as I get older, but I'm not quite done. I do definitely want to move into more commercial opportunities as well. Like you said about Marisha and Leighton, they're perfect blueprints to where you can go in the industry. And so I definitely want to try and veer and venture into them kind of worlds and just explore, just see what I can do, see what I can achieve. Like I'm not one to put limitations on anything now, whereas I used to be, and now I'm not. So let's just have fun, have a ball.
And see what the future holds.
See wagwan.
It may be icy.
I hope so.
Exactly. Well, honestly, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for coming in today. I think, West End performers just deserve so much kind of acclaim for the fact that, 8 shows a week, it's the stamina, powering through and all of that. I just think it's phenomenal. So thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
The best of luck for the rest of the year in Hamilton.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. What a treat that was. And yes, you can catch Jay in Hamilton at the Victoria Palace Theatre. We will be back in another fortnight with another very special West End trailblazer. So hopefully you'll look forward to that one. In the meantime, of course, you can still check us out on the socials at City Academy UK for all the latest updates, and stay tuned for much, much more.